of you to this platform, WFM community. I will just start with the introduction to all the speakers. So let me start with a small introduction to what WFM community means. WFM community, we started just about 4 months back. We thought with the pandemic on and with a lot of commotions in the market, there is no way that people can interact with each other, especially in the construction, architectural and the consultants. So we thought this will give a proper platform for interaction. That's how we started. And within a month or two, we got a lot of response and almost nearly 1,000 members are there in the community now. Most of them are architects, consultants. So they keep interacting with each other. You can just send a message if you want to have some discussion with each other, somebody who's having similar topics in their mind. So the aim is to have a self-sustaining, growing professional network, which enables the connectivity and keeping in mind innovations, technologies, and products, as well as the project, where there is a lot of collaboration is required. So I will start with Mr. Ayush Chowdhury. He is the principal architect and the youngest member in the group, I believe. He's from the ACAD studio based in Gurugram. So he's again from the Sushant school. There's one more speaker from the same school. He did his post-graduation from London, and it's a very growing kind of work that he's doing, using a lot of technologies and tools, as any other young architects will do. They are more into technologies than, use a lot of new tools. And the second speaker, Mr. Architect Abhishek Bij. He is again an MR from London, the research lab from AA. Abhishek is very well known. I mean, he has been given us a lot of articles and a lot of support to the magazine, which is about now 7 years now. We are out with the 37th edition. So I think we would have published a number of articles from him, always supporting, always helping us out, and always enthusiastic to spread knowledge and, interactions with young architects. He's again an academician too. He teaches. Am I right, Abhishek?
Yeah, thank you, Renu. Yes.
So the next speaker is Anuprita. Anuprita is very, very experienced, over 25 years with IM Kadri Architects. IMK is a very well-known and old firm. You can see a number of landmark buildings in Mumbai made by them, designed by them. So fortunate to have her in the discussion, a very well-experienced person. Welcome, Anuprita.
Thank you, Renu.
Again, we have a very different person, very, very learned person, Dr. Neena Singh. She is the professor and head of Department of Architecture from GD Goenka University, an academician, an architect by profession, but turned into an academician because, and she has been teaching in Sushant, she has been teaching in MIT, and she taught in Turkey and SPA Delhi, and at present she is heading the GD Goenka Architectural Department. Welcome, Neena. Our next speaker is again a very, very well-known person. I must say anybody who is in the building construction community will definitely know Jyoti Ramalingam. He is the director of Involve Technologies. They are more, if you talk about testing of facade, there is nobody else to approach who is having a knowledge like Jyoti. And we have also covered his articles on testing and safety and security in building construction. And Jyoti was always supportive, and he's been participating in many of our events too earlier. Right. Thank you, Jyoti. Thanks for all the support. Welcome.
Pleasure is mine.
And Tariq, again, a very, very well-known person. Any building, you look at many landmarks in India and Dubai. his products are used, and very knowledgeable person on facades, fenestrations, any requirement I used to approach. I still approach him for many questions. He was helpful, he is helpful, and he's been supportive throughout our last 7 years during our webinars or seminars or in articles. In fact, you can just go to our website and see how many articles he has written on the facade and fenestration segment. Welcome, Tariq.
Thank you, Renu. And sorry, I need to update my photograph of my new hairstyle. Maybe next.
Oh yes, this was there first.
Sensitive topic, man.
Yeah. So the discussion is on safe facade design and choice of material, which is again, I think it is a lot of things are going on in the facade and fenestration industry. New products coming up every day, and with the new technologies, I think we are the 10-story buildings or 15-story buildings are of past, and now we are aiming to 100 and 150 floors, and so keeping this in mind, I think we should be very safe and secure in looking at the earthquake, wind, rain, fire aspect. All these things are kept in mind while you're designing a building. We are covering latest trends in cladding materials, key factors which consider while designing and selecting materials, and major challenges in the cladding segment. So many points are covered. So welcome, I welcome all of you again. I have one more slide which shows some of your projects. So I start with, again, ACAD Studio.
Yeah.
Screen, right?
Yeah, I can see.
So Ayush, you can talk about the where.
So basically, primarily we work in residential sector, and these are the two. One is almost done. The duplex square is almost done. We are just finishing the cladding, and the wooden boxes is an upcoming project. Over here, what we did in the duplex square, we have dry cladded limestone, and we have created these jalis in the limestone, and we have given a. So basically, this is a mixture of traditional and a contemporary look. So if you look at the columns over here, they are like they're having flutes and they're having capitals and all the grooves going on. And then we have also used newer material like aluminium and given huge fenestrations in the building. So it creates a mixture of both contemporary and traditional architecture. And the other one, can we go to the previous slide, please?
Yeah. Previous one? Yeah.
So I'll just talk about these two, right? So the wooden boxes, it's a very modern design, I say, and we are using we've created these boxes which are very prominent in the entire builder floor, and these are like coming out of the building, and we are using all the Ipe wood around it to give it more natural feel, and so that the people standing in the balcony could have a closer, could feel the material, and they can connect to the surroundings somehow. But the entire effort was to create these two boxes having these tapered walls and to just protrude out from the building. If you see, these are all on the same level, but the attention goes on these two boxes.
Yeah.
So
one?
Yeah.
So
this one was one of my very first projects. It has been completed, and again we are using these. The idea was to create a porch for in the a porch entrance in the house. So even all the entrances you see we are done in Ipe wood, and so that whenever anyone is entering, it gives a wooden exclusion type of a thing when they're entering. So, and we have used these louvers so that the sunlight get diffused because it's a south-facing building. So the sunlight this is a huge balcony. So we wanted a diffused sunlight so that at any point of time, the client could sit down at the balcony and they can use the balcony over there.
Yeah. Thanks, Ayush. And the next one is from Abhishek. Abhishek, which architect? Abhishek from Design Plus Architects. Please
All right. So the first one is the big one that's getting built. We specialize in sports and educational architecture. So that has an IPL stadium that's about 20,000 seater capacity, a football stadium, and all that. What's exciting is actually not the facade, but how the roofing blends with the facade. So we're using a tensile membrane fabric for the extension of the same. We're developing a hyperparaboloid for the roofing structure. The next one is another exciting. This is a recent one. The first one is getting built. The cricket stadium is almost done, the civil. The next one is a recent project. One good thing that came out of lockdown for us was this project. And it's in Assam. So one thing we're trying to do is to develop a sort of a bamboo cladding system for this building, and maybe WFM can help us source the right vendors for the same. And the above one, no, that's fine. I'll quickly rush through. The other one is, of course, the famous Satara competition that happened last year. We didn't win. We loved our project though. Here, it's more about the second skin. We developed a louver system which works differently for each of the orientations. So this is the north side where it's just louvers, it's just frames. And on the other side is again a tensile fabric. The bottom one is a recent project that's just got completed in Gurgaon. It's a sales gallery, a very simple stick system for glazing. Most of the exposure is on the north side, but still the clients have used a DGU. I'm not sure which glass it was. Yeah.
You want to the next? Yeah.
Okay. So this is. Yeah, this is an exciting project. This is a very small project, but we kind of enjoy it. It's for a travel agency, and their building was facing the southwest, so they were going to burn. And their request was to do a complete glaze facade. We convinced them to do a very low-tech MS Jali on the skin, and because I probably should have shared a better image, because they're travel agents, we mapped like the world map around it. So wherever the larger pores are, that's where the conference rooms and director rooms are. And we develop a little pulley detail, a very, very low tech pulley detail that if there are good days like today, like the winters, they can pull up that screen to look inside.
Thank you, Abhishek. So, okay, there's one more. This is very interesting. Yes.
Yeah, this one is a factory in Gurgaon. This we developed along with RatLab. So this is again one of our gazillion experiments of parametric facade being implemented. Good thing is that we kind of work with local labor, and maybe during the conversation I'll touch upon this cute excerpt from the site on this one.
Yeah. Thanks, Abhishek. Now next is Anuprita's projects. We have covered a number of them in our magazine too. Anuprita, could you please talk?
Yeah, so this is Auric Hall. Basically, it's an administrative building which is in the Auric City, which is an industrial city, a greenfield industrial smart city. It's located in Aurangabad, which is an important node along the Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor. And the client came to us saying that they were looking for an iconic building. Of course, it's in the industrial township, so it had to be state of the art. And it also houses, the monitoring systems for the entire industrial city. So it had to be modern. At the same time, what we tried to do was not only did we look at the climatic conditions, of course, considerations, of course, for the building, but we also looked at how we could get some of the features of the cultural heritage of the city incorporated into this building. The challenge was to get in both these criteria make it look modern as well as get the historical features in. And so what we did was we had this large glass facade, a north-facing facade, which fortunately on the master plan there was this large water body which we wanted to face. We wanted to give most of the offices in the building the view of the water body, and therefore we had this glass facade on the north, which of course brought in glare-free light, and at the same time, chose a appropriate glass with the appropriate tech specs, so that heat gain is reduced. On the other three facades, which is the east, west, and the south, because of the location of Aurangabad. It gets very hot, and so we covered it with an aluminum jali. The aluminum jali is actually distance from the main, the main building wall, external wall, by about a meter, a little more than a meter, so that there's a free flow of air and there's diffused light coming into the building. And then there is regular fenestration behind. Also on the south side, we have terraces, double height terraces, which also serve as breakout spaces for the offices. And we made these green terraces, which again act as a buffer between the harsh sunlight coming in from the south and the office spaces.
Yeah. Can we move on to the next one?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is a university.
This is SUHRC, which is the Symbiosis University Hospital and Research Center. So it is a multi-speciality hospital and a skill development center located in Pune, about a 1 hour drive from the city of Pune. And on this facade, now this, the location of the site is such that it is on the foothills, and we needed to make it gel with the natural surroundings, and so we chose to use these compressed earth blocks. They are locally, the blocks are made on site. The material used is locally sourced. They are sun-dried, and we've used them on the facade, and we've also kind of made cavities, boxes on the facades, so that it kind of reduces the heat gain in the interior spaces. And you can go on to the next one. Yeah, this is the Symbiosis International University. So the skill center is on the foothill, and this campus is on the top of the hill. And here, similarly, now we've used a lot of biophilic architecture. So there's a lot of landscaping. And again, here we've used these compressed earth blocks all along the facade. And since these are institutional buildings, they give it a very warm feel. And the campus is very well appreciated, and it's featured a lot in various places.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, now Tariq, with those wonderful buildings in Pune and Hyderabad, Tariq, please explain.
So the building that you see on the top right of your screen, that's the Lupin R&D Center. The Lupin, it's obviously a very famous pharmaceutical company. So this was by VA Architects in Bangalore, and they designed this facade with primarily keeping the objective that this was supposed to be a research and development center. So they wanted a lot of light streaming in. Now, and we will talk on this during the course of this presentation on how we can balance form and functionality and also add another layer of safety onto this. So you can see these are very, very large panels of glass installed, and the unique capability of these glasses is its spectral selectivity. So the facade that you see installed here actually has 3 layers of silver on its glass as a coating. And what that means is it is allowing close to 65% light and blocking off more than 75% heat. That's the unique capability of this facade. So you get a lot of light streaming in, so you provide for very vibrant and very airy interiors. And that's great for people who want to do research. Science proves that you need more light for your productivity to go up higher. And that was one of the criteria that we had when we suggested these glasses onto them. You can also see over there, the same slide.
This one, yeah.
Yeah, I'm continuing on the Lupin R&D Center. You can also see that, although it's not very visible in this photograph, but there's actually another layer of skin on some of the floors, which is a mesh from GKD. And that was installed as a second skin, just for its aesthetics as well as for diffusion of sunlight on some of the areas, especially on the top where you have a direct stream of sunlight hitting the facade. The building on the bottom is the Park Hyatt Hotel in Hyderabad at Banjara Hills. The architect was John Portman from Atlanta. And although you do not see this in the photograph, but the unique character of this building, just like other John Portman constructions, is the atrium section in the center. And here also we see a very, very high performance glass being installed on the facade. This building was completed more than a decade back, and one of the very, very advanced facades for its times when we constructed that. Next slide, please.
Yeah, thank you.
This is the Motilal Oswal, the finance company headquarters in Mumbai, actually very close to our office. And you would see here that the corners are not segmented with flat panes. In fact, these are all bent glasses. And the challenge was to seamlessly integrate the corners in a bent form along with the flat facade that you see continuing on the front face of the building. So very unique architecture again, Nitin Parulekar Architects. A lot of different types of coatings and glasses being used, both to balance functionality as well as to balance the aesthetics. So there are some glasses with a lighter coating, which allows more light to stream in, some glasses which are more reflective, like the one you see in the corners, so that the building has more vibrancy on its facade. So a combination of a lot of glasses in this building, a lot of frits, a lot of patterns, just so that aesthetically as well as from a functionality perspective, we were able to achieve all the norms that were set forth.
Okay, the next one is from Nina. She's showing some student work. This is all thesis work, I believe. Please, Nina, could you please explain?
Actually, Redu, this was not the thesis one, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So in contrast, I mean, I saw all the amazing architecture on display. So this was actually in contrast to what has been shown so far. We were engaging with an informal settlement called Ayanagar in Gurgaon, if you know.
Yes.
And we were doing affordable housing. And this was a housing project, and then we took this project into the building construction studio, and we asked the students to make construction drawings on how you are going to actually fabricate. So this student, because it was affordable housing, we were looking at the whole idea of how you can use facade in a system which is integrated with the construction of the building. It's not an add-on because we are trying to lower costs, etc. And this student started experimenting a lot with fiber reinforced, with high pressure laminate, with composite panels. Though we tried to kind of, keep it all within the realm of affordability, but that was my kind of, after looking at all of these fancy buildings on display, that we need to also, when we are doing our facades, look at affordable housing and look at the informal sector and see how this particular sector can engage with this. And then try and kind of, provide solutions which are possibly simpler to integrate into something which is not, let's say, high end or high specification.
Yeah, I think this is what India is looking for also for now, I think, right? A lot of
yeah, the thesis projects in that other presentation I'd sent you, we do encourage our students to also experiment a lot, come up with very fantastic shapes, which they come back to us and they ask us ki, ye banega kaise, and we are like, that'll happen, and that's where the industry probably engages effectively. But we tell them that, you should be able to use your imagination and creativity, and right now, at least as long as you're students, not consider the fact that how will this be constructed, because that's where the industry comes in, and that's where if you're able to engage and say, okay, dream up whatever dreams you want to dream up, we'll see how we can build it.
great.
And yeah, and that's what our focus is right now.
Yeah. So I would end the presentation from my side here, and I think Jyoti has got something to show us, which I'm just stopping the sharing. And Jyoti, please go ahead with sharing your video.
Yes, I have the privilege of sharing this platform with such amazing architects and who have the power of dreaming, and they dream up with, come up with, futuristic buildings which look fantastic, and most of them are unique, one of a kind. And so whenever they come up with it, like Nina mentioned that, architects are basically dreamers. First, they come up with a concept and they want it to happen. Now, how it is to happen, that's where the industry comes up. So it's a one-off product. So you create a system for it that will be able to, fit in with the dreams and make that dream into a reality. Now, since all these things are coming up for the first time, you take a unique project, everything in that, the entire system is new, and everything has been designed conceptually on the computer with modeling software. But reality, how it's going to perform in real life situation is going to be a small, there is an element of a doubt. So the best way to clear that doubt is to go through a process of testing, because every product that we use in our lives today has come to the market after many, many levels of testing, a very, very vigorous testing. That's how you differentiate between a unique, iconic product and a off-the-road, unknown product. So if there is a Mercedes-Benz and there are 200 other companies behind them who we may not even know the brands, but why does this few brands shine out is because they have pushed their products to be to certain levels of endurance, so that it's performing at every stage, at every situation. So we are having this unique position to test projects and make those dreams come true for architects. So I just want to take one simple video of a test that we are done for the Bangalore International Airport. This is a simple water test, dynamic water. I mean, this photograph is an air infiltration test where we are calibrating the chamber. This is a 14-meter tall sample. It's an actual replica of the real facade of the so our job is to actually put these samples through a real wind tested for air infiltration, water penetration, structural stability, and seismic movements and impact. So these are the basic requirements of a facade. They need to be safe. In order to measure their energy efficiency, you have air infiltration to make sure that they are watertight when there is wind-driven rain coming in from outside. We put it through a very vigorous, static water and a dynamic water penetration test. And then we do a structural test where we measure every element of the facade for positive wind loads and negative wind loads through using some transducers. And there are allowable movements.
One question which has come, Tariq, which glass have you used in that the project which is in Mumbai, which you showed?
So the one Lupin, I believe, right? That's the glass which I said was very high performance.
Yes.
Yeah, that's triple silver Loei coating from Vitro Glass, ex PPG. It was called PPG in the past, but they are the world's first and till very recent the only manufacturer of triple silver Loei coatings. So the performance allowed for 64% light transmission with a 0.27 solar heat gain.
All right.
1.5 U value.
Yeah, this is one question from audience which I asked, just it popped up, so I asked you. So let us start with the debate or discussion, whatever it is. We have seen many buildings which have been using ACP, laminates, tiles, natural stones, and of course glass. And we are also seeing buildings which are using copper, zinc, and even titanium in their on the facades. So could you please tell me about the latest trends or the experiments being done in adding designs and materials? I think we will start with Ayush, the youngest member.
So basically nowadays what I've seen abroad is that they are trying to do a lot with the parametric designs, and they are trying to make buildings with robotics, and they are trying to 3D print it. So that's a very interesting thing. And talking about the material, so material in fact, carbon fiber is getting some acknowledgement nowadays. Like people have started using carbon fiber in the cladding system, and yes, the high pressure laminates and the stone and like the tiles and the bricks, they have been the traditional materials. But yes, I agree with Tariq what he said, that these material take a lot of time because they have to be tested and for all the loads and everything. So currently, what we are doing in India, we are mostly using stone or tiles or high pressure laminates. Like I've been dealing with smaller projects, not bigger projects like the rest of the architects. So, and yes, people have been working with a lot of specifications with different glasses, like to reduce the heat coming in and all that. Yeah, I think that would be.
Yeah, Anuprita, what do you have to add to this? Yours is also, you have been doing larger as well as smaller projects, right? So it depends on the situations or the kind of projects. So could you please throw some light on the materials which you use and which is being used, which was there earlier, and what are the changes what you're seeing?
Yeah, so earlier, the way the facade was looked at was only in the form of decorative kind of facades. Visual art was created through facades. But now facade materials and the way facades are designed, it's totally looked at in a very different way, because now the more the importance is given more to how the facade can protect the building, how it can insulate the building, how it can create better ventilation for the building. So also create a better relationship between the indoors and the outdoors, get in a better quality of light. So whenever we get a new project to do, we first look at the location of the project. So climatically, how do you treat that building? Of course, firstly, you have to orient the building in such a way so that it already gives you an advantage in the kind of facade that you have to put in. Also, cost constraints are very big. All these dynamic facades and all these parametric facades and all that are very expensive. So you have to look at how you can optimize the cost. Other than that, of course, you have to look at the local context, and it's many times a client comes to you saying, like for Auric, they came to us saying we want an iconic building. Not only should it represent the state-of-art technology that we're using in the industrial city, but it should also reflect the architectural heritage. So we've kind of taken off some patterns from the historical Bibi Ka Maqbara and various other monuments that are there, and we've kind of integrated these two things. So of course, there's a wide variety of materials that are available, but you have to kind of look at all these aspects specific to your project requirements, and then decide how you want.
So Nina was talking about the low-cost projects and the materials which can be used as an experiment, or probably that can be used in large scale later. What is the kind of research which is going on in the field?
So I was just hearing everybody and so to add my 2 cents. What Tariq is doing is very, very exciting. And, young students, they look at these works and they get very excited at the possibilities of what is being achieved. But from academia, what we try and instill in them is also a sense of responsibility. And that responsibility is towards the environment, to look at sustainability, to look at the context. And, we are always engaging with India. And India comes with its own set of rules. And low cost, as Anuprita was saying, that, cost is not just a concern, it's the most important concern in our country. We cannot really kind of, look at projects as capital intensive. So sometimes in academia, what we find is that students get distracted when they look at these very flashy buildings, and they sort of say that, this is what I want to do. And therefore, what we try and instill in them is to try to engage with. So one of the ways that we are trying to do that is to remain local. To sort of look at local craftspersons, look at materials that are available locally, see if that. So for large scale projects, maybe the scales don't work out, maybe the economies don't work out. That said, if we are able to do a bit more research, and we are sort of very actively trying to do that, we can scale up. We were just kind of last semester looking at rammed earth as an option. We engaged with the local company who was making rammed earth walls, and they were saying that this is possible in a farmhouse, it's possible in a small home, but what if it's a high-rise building? I can't do a rammed earth high-rise building. But then can we do some more experimentation and look at local technologies and try and see how we can engage local people in devising solutions which would be contextual.
Okay, now Abhishek, he is doing both. I mean, the low scale, low-rise buildings as well as the high-rise. You are doing a lot of projects also. So could you please throw some light on the materials that you're using on either side for
Actually,
flashy malls as well as the public?
Right. I think who you ask what the trend is would vary if it's an architect or someone from the industry. Personally, architects would always romanticize the vision that they are chasing, and I think both at any level of a large vision, which is a large capital-driven patronage, or a smaller segment. Currently, what's happening in architectural industry is that there is no dominant style. There are influences that are being from Palladian to modern to parametricism, as Ayush mentioned. There is no dominant style, and India, thankfully, for the last 2 decades, has the luxury of a huge amount of exposure. Everyone is looking towards us, towards Southeast Asia, and thankfully, we've got this amazing mix of designers, engineers who are able to put together a sort of a recipe that is suited to us. Not only, I don't mean climatically, but I just mean formally and aesthetically and so on and so forth. For example, the Symbiosis project that Nukrita showed, if you look at the project, you'll say terracotta and brick is back in the game. But my argument is never left. So currently, at least from what I understand, most architects, they're essentially chasing the vision or the intent, and they currently have the luxury to choose a gazillion set of materials, which helps them enable to exhibit that intent. And then thankfully there is a huge industry support, like Winwall and like FG and like McCoy and so on, so many other players that help us put together that vision. I can only share, I need heat transmission, and I want daylight in. Tariq's going to give us those figures of 0.65 and 0.15s and 1.2s and so on and so forth. We are not in a capacity to be honest, we are not in a capacity to judge one over the other. We can just paint the larger endeavor. But that's I think where the trend is. So essentially vision, patronage, everything in the bracket of a large ethical responsibility of being sustainable.
So, Tariq, you've been there for various buildings as a supplier of glass and advising people how to use it correctly, right? Whether you are looking at a institution or a hospital or a hospitality building, or whether it's a hotel, so or a residential, any high multi-story building, right? So when a builder comes to you or an architect comes to you with a need, and if you find that this is not the right thing for the particular project, how do you make them understand when they go for wrong product? Is there any incidents which you have come across?
Actually, there are several, and I mean, obviously, for the purpose of this discussion, I cannot take names, but you hit a very relevant point, Renu, that every building has its own character and its own function. A building which is designed for hospitality or a hotel is very different from something where people are going to live, very different from something where people are going to work. And depending on also the location, the facade needs to fundamentally change in its form. Very few times do we see this actually being converted to reality. So if I can allude to your previous question on new facade techniques or materials, and as all of them have rightly said, Abhishek, as you pointed out, there are a gazillion different products available at hand to great designers like yourselves to use. But the other part of the equation, and what you said, Anuprita, is do the clients have that appetite to spend so much? And do we really have that budget where we can say, look, this is what my building is intended to do. This is my, say, a residential building situated in the heart of, again, as an example, Mumbai, a 60 or 70 story tower. Each facade is going to have its own requirements in terms of allowing ingress of heat or light. What are the kind of materials that we should use? And then the other equation comes up where those two dreaded words called value engineering, when we come to the drawing board and say, you know, this is turning out to be too much, and facades are really not going to get us as much value from the buyer as other elements or other characteristics of that building would. So let's cut off some of this and let's come to what we would call as a compromise in terms of what the performance of the eventual facade is going to be. So I know I'm bordering on the debate part of this discussion, but that's actually the reality. In fact, if you will go through the 3 projects that I showed you, one was a hotel and 2 are actually self-use. And I was actually scratching my head real hard when you sent me that request to give you photographs. And surprisingly, I find out that when people have constructions made for their own use, the tendency to spend on the right materials is a lot more than it is for something that is to be leased out or something that has to be given away. So, and again, if not all, then we see most of the projects, moving in this direction. So I can totally understand all my eminent architects on this panel with the challenge that they have in terms of, Jyoti, you said there is a dream, and how we can translate that dream into a reality, which will actually turn into a reality on a very practical front. Those are some of the challenges that we have. But yes, to answer your question directly, Renu, we've had a lot of instances where developers, consultants have come to us asking us for our recommendations. I would say most of the times it is followed, but sometimes again, at the expense of going with lower quality, or not low quality rather, but low performance products in the name of value engineering, most of them are diluted.
Okay, so I have a question of whether you looking at the budget constraints. Sometimes you look for something which is very, very high profile glass, or then you come down to the low profile or a lower priced material. So this will definitely affect the entire quality of the building. So I hope Jyoti can give us some insight on how this, maybe some incidents, you don't have to name the buildings, where totally different material is used. And I won't say it was a total fault, or probably it could have been a better one, where you have tested and found that this shouldn't be the way when the material is used on the facade.
Actually, frankly, if you ask me, my area of expertise, and we have a limitation, we have very little to do with the materials which are being used, because primarily we test facades. So the only things which we find which will have issues with the hardware in the openables, which typically fail because it's either inadequate to take the wind loads. There is somebody trying to get something to do to do a performance which it's not capable of, or it is installed wrongly. There is something which has a test certificate that it can take 5 kPa, but in the lab it fails at 2.5 kPa. And then when you examine why it is actually failed, it's primarily because it's not been installed properly. Especially when it comes to the locks, there are 8-point locks, 10-point locks, and most of these locks have only actual engagement of about 4 mm or 5 mm. So if 2 or 3 of these locks are just moved 2 mm away, and then you find that in the place of 8 points, you are only having 4 points which are holding it. So when the pressure is applied, these 4 points are unable to hold the sash, and the pin which is holding the sash shears away because of the pressure. It's purely a manual error, human error. So one of the things that happen in testing is to actually understand that the small 2 mm can make a major difference. So you're willing to spend the money, you buy the best hardware, primarily because you have not installed it properly, it's failing. That being one. The other important issue now, which all of them, Abhishek was mentioning about, there is such a huge option available, an array of choices for the architect to choose from. Internationally, you can import products from anywhere you want. The primary thing now is that the difference that we are going into a new kind of a era where high rise is more popular. And when it comes to high rise, we have to add another very important part or a very important requirement, which is the safety, where it is fire safety and structural safety. Because in a low rise, the performance is not so critical and the wind loads are not so high. So it's surrounded by buildings. So most of the time, it's very, very, very rare that you find a failure. But once you cross that 15 floors and go above 45 meters, then the dynamics changes tremendously and everything is new. Everything is up for re-examination. And the architect has to put in a lot of inputs to look at the safety in terms of fire, very important, because most products which are looking very beautiful, they perform well for energy efficiency, but in fire, they are a disaster. You can't afford to use such a product there. So it's again a kind of a very important thing that you need to keep in mind when you go for a product, selecting of the right product for the project.
There's a question from the audience for you. How much seismic effect can a facade withstand? That is one question. I don't know what it means. It's from somebody. It's saying that, how will you measure it?
No, the structural performance is basically the wind loads. So we simulate the wind load, positive wind loads and negative, because the chamber that we make is a airtight chamber. Where
Jyoti, the question was seismic effect. So
seismic.
Yeah, the seismic effect.
Seismic, we have in the chamber, we have, if it's a continuous facade, which is spanning across floors, then we have equipment where we physically move the middle slab, left and right, or top and down, or front and back. All the three options are available. And the facade is supposed to accommodate this kind of movement. So we have the simulation of the movement of either 10 mm, it's actually height by 500. So if it's a 4 meter height, then divided by 500, it will be 8 mm. And keeping in mind the seismic zone in which the project is. We have in India zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. And Delhi, I think, is in one of the high seismic zones, where Chennai and Bangalore come under much lower zones. So the movement is decided by the structural engineer. He designs the entire civil structure for that movement. The facade also needs to accommodate that amount of movement.
So, can you tell us something about the smart cladding materials and technologies which could help building a sustainable or a safe building, which can where the research is in progress for such kind of natural calamities?
No.
Looking at glass, I'm asking this question.
Tariq maybe is a better.
Can you talk about this, Abhishek?
So, Tariq, go first, man.
Your question is
the smart cladding materials. Smart cladding materials for facades.
Yeah. So
there is some sensors or.
So I mean, the definition of smart. Obviously, there is. It depends on how you look at it. If you are looking at facades from when you use the word sensor or IoT, how we can integrate all of that in a facade. There are some, I would say, experiments being conducted worldwide on how facades can become smart. So one of the ways to look at smart is what we see in terms of facades today is almost everything that we see on facade is very static. So the form and function that it has during the morning is the same as what it would have in the night. It's the same what is in the summer, winter, irrespective of the weather or the time of the day, it behaves the same. And the challenge with a lot of product designers, with a lot of manufacturers like ourselves, and also very importantly with architects, is how we can shift from, or have a paradigm shift from a static facade into a dynamic facade. And when you use the word dynamic, obviously it has to change its form, it has to change its shape, it has to change its performance depending on the environmental conditions that it is subjected to at that particular point of time, and make sure that the interiors or the occupants are always comfortable irrespective of what's going on outside. So one of the ways to do this is, and a very new emerging technology, is the use of what we call as dynamic glass, or which can be done either electronically, which is electrochromic, or through light, which is photochromic. And there are a lot of companies rather coming now which are able to offer these kind of technologies. So depending on the amount of incident sunlight, the tonality of that glass will go from light to dark. So if, say, the intensity is higher, there's a higher lux level on the facade, the glass becomes darker, just like how you would have on some of the glasses that you have, photochromic glasses that's available in the market. That technology is now being transferred to facades. And on the electronic front, then you can control it through your iPad or through your building and management system. And you just have a simple switch which can change the tonality or the light transmission in the glass. So you get done with all these blinds as a second skin. You just need the glass and you're done with it. On the other side, then, if the glass is static, then you can have probably some dynamic elements like a dynamic sunshade, or, there's a great example. I always cite this, the Al Bahar Towers in Abu Dhabi, where there's this Mashrabiyya pattern which opens and closes, and you can control it electronically. Looks great aesthetically, and also has this great benefit of, cutting off sunlight at the time you want. So there is movement, and I think facades of the future will tend to lean more on the dynamic side than on the static side. I think that's where most of the I would say the revolution in facades is taking place right now.
Yeah, Anuprita,
another thing. Sorry, go on.
Oh, it's fine. Anuprita, do you agree with it? You have been using this kind of technologies with simple jali pattern on your Aurangabad project, right? So do you agree with the dynamic facades?
Well, they're very good, and we should appreciate, what they're able to do and what they're able to offer us.
Yes.
But yeah, unfortunately, I don't know whether, in the Indian context, how many buildings or rather how many clients would be able to really take advantage of all this that is there in the market to offer. Cost, I've faced, in many projects. I mean, we want to do a fantastic job and we have a lot of aspirations for those projects, but then there is always at the end, there's cost cutting. Correct. And you just have to, so it's a dream. It will be a dream for me to be able to take up a project where I can afford to do it.
Dynamic. Abhishek, what is your take on it?
So there is one aspect that is currently has reached the market, which is this impetus-driven tech. So I mean, impetus can be light, impetus can be wind, and then you have the motors and the rotors and whatever reading material for the facade to move. Another very interesting thing, which I think the country would probably benefit, or the markets like us would benefit, is the kind of research work that is happening. I don't know whether everyone knows of this Manuel Gea hospital in Mexico, where they claim that they have installed a second skin with a titanium dioxide coat. Never mind how it looks. I mean, that look is a different ballgame altogether, but it's this coat of titanium dioxide, and they claim it's a smog-eating facade because I think the way TiO2 reacts and turns it into carbon and water vapor. So I'm quite excited at the kind of material research. And at the other end, for example, ETH Zurich is doing this amazing amount of research on different kind of veneers, wooden veneers, which are hydrophobic and hydrophilic. So the dynamism is not now dependent on these motors. It's dependent on rain automatically affecting what the material behaves. So cost is definitely an aspect, and I'm pretty sure we'll discuss it like several times over. But I think the excitement, of course, if there is a patronage and you can have things, everybody loves the Al Bahar Towers. It's amazing what it does, and it's kind of opened this avenue of all young architects and engineers to push the boundary that way. But having said that, I think the potential lies in this kind of material research that's happening around the world.
Yeah. And second is that Ayush, what is your dream material for the future? Now you've just started with your work, and
so as everyone is discussing about dynamic facades, like these kinetic facades they are like amazing. So I would love if we can change the building according to the probably the climate or the view. Like people have been researching on rotating the building so that you can get the appropriate view. Like if you it moves with the sun probably, so something like that. Something happens with the facade so that you get a new view at every hour or probably at like some point of time in a day.
I think it's already there in Dubai, right?
Yeah, it's already there, but yeah, talking about the cost effectiveness of it. So I believe these can be done much cheaper, but it requires tremendous amount of guts to do such type of buildings. And we also need to research a lot on what is happening and how the loads shift and all we have to take care of the safety of the buildings as well for the same.
Mm-hmm. So what is your take, Nina? You being teaching so many students, and you must be hearing from the students what is their outlook on the future buildings. So what kind of research they want to do on this kind of facade materials and something for the future?
So again, you know, I'm beginning to feel a bit like a you know, sort of retrogressive almost, but we again try and you know, this particular paradigm that what's in, what is everybody using, what's happening in England, what's happening in Europe, what's happening in the United States. We try and kind of rephrase that, and we say, you know what, let's try and find out what it is that we can do. So let's go back into history. Let's look at what we could do 100 years ago. For example, this dynamic facade. There is an Arab Institute in Paris that was made by Jean Nouvel in 1983, which actually had a dynamic facade. It was absolutely revolutionary at that time. But then we feel that, you know, so yes, newness is always exciting. Newness is always something that attracts young people. But in academics, what we try and do is we sort of temper that, and we say, you know what, let's look back in history. Let's look back at our history, and therefore the thing that I'd like to highlight here is this kind of theoretical debate between active and passive. So a lot of these things are very active. You know, we are using technology, we are doing add-on things. But what if we look at it as passive, which is what I think Anuprita's facades are sort of leaning more towards the passive form of looking at a building engaging with nature. So try and look at jalis, try and look at sunshades, which are apart. Look at your four facades differently. You know, like a lot of our students, they do this is my front of the building, and that's it. You know, they don't know left, right, and so we say, you know what, there's no front, there's an orientation. So you have to look at north, south, east, and west. And let's look at all the four facades as passively reacting to the climate that they are in, both from the external factors, okay, what is happening to the building, and also from the comfort of the people who are actually occupying that building. Let's look at it from that, because sometimes, you know, there are some very exciting facade solutions which result in you know, not very high, sort of compromising the comfort level of the occupants. Looking at wellness, looking at a lot of ideas which today are becoming, and I mean, of course, the pandemic has sort of put all of that into a tizzy.
So, listen, I mean, I just want to interrupt over here. You were saying about the comfort. So you see that the number of buildings, especially the commercial and office buildings these days, is glass enclosures or totally enclosed buildings. And I would like to know from Jyoti, kind of, you know, the hazards of such kind of buildings, and there is a fire or something. Maybe there is in wind, recent buildings accidents in Chennai, which we saw, the facade flying away, flying off from the buildings. What kind of hazards do you see in Indian building when it is high rise? Are they going for testing? Are they approaching the agencies? Do we have anybody to put it in control. We do have agencies, but we don't have the government authority to have a standard for the construction or the material. So what can we do, and how can you help it as being an architect, being a consultant, being an academician? You are on mute.
The Indian standards for testing are just getting ready. Maybe in the next 6 months, it's going to be submitted to BIS, and then it will be out as a spec. Up to then, we are following American standards or EN standards. Now, coming to the safety aspect of it, a facade can only do what it's designed to do. Now, if you want to cut, do reverse engineering, do cost engineering, do value engineering, and make it, remove all the safety aspects of it, then finally you end up with shell. You end up with a product that looks beautiful, but when it's really pushed, when there is a cyclone, like you said in Chennai, there were many buildings where the glass flew off. And the other aspect of it is the fire. There is no mandate as of now. There is no mandate that a high-rise building has to be tested. So maybe in the coming years there will be some rules, regulations which are framed to make it a little more organized. Because now, if you take a project, one of the sad parts is that anyone who says I can do it is given the job to do it. So because he's quoted the price which is in the budget. Now, whether he is capable of doing it, whether he has the capacity, whether he has a knowledge, whether he has an experience, as he having a background to execute such a project, it's an open question mark. And so the developer pays for it. At the end of it, there's a huge mess at site, and they're trying to patch up, do something, do some jugaad to get things patched up from the outside. It can work sometimes. Sometimes it's a disaster they have to live with. So more and more people are getting, educated on this. Only when you feel the pain, you say that, okay, it's worth engaging a consultant. There are facade consultants in India who are qualified, have the experience, who can give you a proper engineering for a facade. Now the architect conceives it. He has an elevation, he has a perspective, and then he transfers that to the consultant, who actually gives you the structure for it, what it should have, what should be the aluminum, what should it be, how should it look, what is the wind load for that project, what are the safe materials which have to be used, what are the brands which are approved and which are which have been certified. These are small things which only the professional can do. I mean, you can't expect everybody to be an expert in everything. Those are the days when one architect would be able to do everything because it was a manageable size. Now you have size which are massive. You have 10,000, 15,000, 50,000 square meters of glazing. It's truly huge, humongous. So to actually execute it within a given period of time, execute it to a certain specification, you need an expert to guide. And that will cost a little bit of money, but it's well worth it. So as long as people understand that everything in life has a cost, and if you're willing to pay for it, you will get it. You can get the best, you can get whatever you want, but there is a cost.
Tariq, the next question is to you. The glass being an important facade material, how do you specify the type of glass used in the installation? And do you look at the installation also, the glass of glass facade, when you provide glass for certain particular kind of glass, certain type of profiles are required, certain kind of installation methods are required? Do you advise on that, and how do you go about high-rise project or low-rise project?
So we are purely on the glass production and glass supply side. So
yeah.
I mean, rather than us suggesting the profiles based on the glass, it should be the other way around.
Okay.
Profiles should dictate the type of glass, because depending on their weight capability and depending on their, even for sometimes depending on the size of the profile, whether it can accommodate the wind loads or the seismic loads or whatever, those calculations are made. Having said that, I want to highlight this very important fact that we have seen this trend of late, that acoustics are playing a very, very important and integral role when it comes to the choice of glass for facades. And especially when you look at high rises or any kind of construction next to a highway or a busy traffic junction, there is this demand which is coming from the consumers that they want quieter interiors. And then a simple monolithic facade is just not going to do it. So we then tend to recommend laminates, laminated glass. We tend to recommend insulated glass or a combination of laminated and insulated. But it's also very critical from a profile perspective or from a system perspective that there are no leaks in the profile as well. So otherwise, all of the good work that you do in terms of glass specification gets diluted if there is a leakage to the system. And remember, whenever you look at any kind of safety or performance, when I say safety, say from a fire perspective or a wind load perspective, when I say performance from a heat perspective or a sound perspective, these are all always factors of the weakest link and not the strongest. So whenever you design something, every element has to act at that certain minimum level. And if you go below that, you're going to destroy all the good that the other building materials are going to do. So in most cases, we work together with the profile companies or the fabricators and get the right kind of glass specified for projects.
So here, Abhishek, I want to ask you about the building maintenance unit. One of the major problems which you're facing is the kind of dust and other material which is being accumulated on the facade, whether it is a glass facade or it is any other kind of cladding which we are using. So BMUs are very important. How much attention is given for planning BMUs while you're designing a building? I think it's a basic aspect which you have to consider as an architect providing for the BMUs.
Sure. So currently, at least practices like ours, BMU does come in at the DD stage. But unfortunately, what happens is that we don't have the luxury to, let's say, hire a facade consultant at an early stage. These are conversations that happen with, say, even it's a developer project or a public sector project. There is absolutely no scenario where we get a facade consultant on board to discuss the BMU in detail. So what happens is our solutions remain at a kind of a low res suggestions of what is the potential that can be integrated in a building at an early stage. However, we would like a much stronger marriage because if we can resolve these issues at a very early situation, a lot of things can get addressed very easily. Very generic statement, but it's true. Like Mr. Jyoti said, if you want that solution, you have to spend a little bit. So we kind of have so the next strategy is that, you get a potential applicator, you have a discussion with him, how you're going to solve this for us, assuming that you're going to do this job, or you have a benchmarking from another project. So that becomes, let's say it solves to about 70% of what the intention is, but not as precise as you would like.
Mm-hmm. So do you have anything to add, Anuprita, being an architect who's doing a lot of projects? The BMUs, which is part of any tall building or where there is a lot of maintenance is required, for example, for an airport or any facade which needs to be cleaned or maintained regularly. What kind of facilities can be given or applied while you're designing a project?
So from my experience, whatever I have worked on, the buildings that we have worked on, I agree with what Abhishek said. Most often than not, you don't have a facade consultant on board. And so then all these considerations, like he said, you're trying to gather information from here, there, and the other, and then you're trying to incorporate it. And then eventually it's only much later in the project that you actually get in a vendor and then, he kind of dictates whatever is required to be done.
So, Jyoti, could you please tell me what are the regular checking what we need to do, whether irrespective of the weather or, while you are having a tall building, you constructed a tall building, but what are the regular maintenance checks one should do? You are on mute, Jyoti, you're on mute.
in as far as facades are concerned, like any other project, any other product, timely maintenance is a part and parcel of it in order to make sure that it lasts for the life cycle of the entire building. So most often we have issues with the movable items, which are the handles, the hardware, which is the only thing that which can go wrong in a facade, in the openables. Otherwise, as far as the glass or the aluminium is concerned, there is very little you can do once it's installed at site. There's nothing that you can change. Of course, you have spontaneous breakage in glasses because of this nickel sulfide issues coming up. And then those glass panels are re-glazed at site in situ. The broken glass is removed and the sealant is cleaned and the new glass is installed with a 2-part sealant with some temporary cleats fixed to hold it for some time and then removed. But for that, cleaning of the glass facade is the most important part for the aesthetics, which needs a BMU, which has to be planned well in advance to ensure that it works and it can access every little corner where the building facade is. Because most of the time we have not just plain flat surfaces, you may have odd shapes which are projecting outwards or sliding inwards. So then you need to have special designed BMUs to accommodate those kind of facades. So these are all collaborations which need to come in well in advance, so that we don't have to work on a jugaad. You have a very
rarely any buildings are get cleaned by cradles also. Bande bichare latke hue hote hain bahar. So
Spider-Mans
exactly.
are very famous.
Tariq, I want to discuss the favorite topic of most of the webinars now, the fire and facade. So you are supplying glass, and how do you ensure that the glass can withstand the kind of accidents, such accidents?
So great question, Renu. I was in fact waiting for that because fire safety is such an important topic today when it comes to facades. More so because a lot of these urban developments are so close to each other that a disaster in one building can affect the other very quickly if proper precautions are not taken at the building stage. When it comes to facades, obviously fire spreads either horizontally or vertically. Horizontally, it would spread if your proper precautions are not taken within the floor plate, interior partitions, lift lobbies, sprinkler systems, etc. Where facades really play a very important role is in stopping this vertical spread of fire. And we've seen this in some very, very prominent constructions. The Address Hotel in Dubai, for instance, on New Year's Eve, the tower in London, which caught fire in a spate of 3 or 4 minutes, the one in South Korea. So these are not just closer home. This is actually a very global thing. And one of the primary culprits when it comes to propagation of fire through vertically through a facade rather, is use of combustible elements. And it's very critical that we use non-combustible elements. Glass by itself is completely non-combustible. When I say non-combustible, it doesn't have the tendency to flame up and propagate fire from one pane to the next, but then other elements in the building do. It's not important that it has to be fire rated. So there's a distinct difference between a flammable object and a fire rated object. A fire rated object will withstand that fire and stop it from going from place to place. A flammable object will not flame up and cause that propagation. So fire rated would have certain minutes, 50, 60, 100, 120, whatever. But in terms of some elements like say a non-fire rated aluminum composite panel or a non-fire rated HPL, these are just ticking time bombs. And whenever something like this happens, you will see this whole problem going from one end to the other. Just a second, Jyoti, I'll come to I'll just finish this off. On the positive side, I have to tell this, that the new national building codes, which are in effect now, have a lot of comprehensive rules when it comes to stopping the spread of fire, both at the horizontal and a vertical level. And I would encourage everyone who's listening, and obviously all the designers, to stick to those rules as much as they possibly can, and in turn ensure that the entire building and a facade are fire safe, at least for the occupants as well as for people outside.
So Abhishek, I have a question here.
Can I just make a small
Okay,
addition?
Jyoti, please go
Tariq,
ahead.
a very comprehensive answer from Tariq.
Yes.
But the fact is that the product at glass is the least of the issue
yes.
in a
Yes.
fire. It's not a flammable item. It
Correct.
can take very high temperatures,
Correct.
and it's not a critical issue. But where the weakness is in the system is the smoke seal. You can have the vertical fire, more than fire, it's the smoke, which can travel upwards, and it goes from the floor where the fire is happening, maybe 10 floors above there, you can get smoke coming up and people dying because of asphyxiation. So most often this very, very small gap between the curtain wall and the slab is taken very lightly. Just put something to cover it up and cover it under a tile, or not take too much of care or there, but that becomes a life and death kind of an issue. So there are only two ways the fire can travel. It can leapfrog from the outside, or it can go up like a chimney. So for the chimney effect, the only way to prevent the fire from going from one floor to another is through a good smoke seal, a fire stop as they call it. And from outside, it is what Tariq mentioned, using a fire rated spandrel of at least a 900 mm, which the standard specifies now. Use a fire rated product, which is a FR grade ICP or a solid metal panel or GRC, whatever they use. It has to be a fire rated product, a minimum of 905 mm, to prevent this fire from leapfrogging from one floor to the other. These two, if they are taken care of, the risk of fire comes down dramatically.
So Tariq, I've been talking to a few people who are into this BIS standards the other day. So they were saying that there are people who are manufacturing glasses, international or global manufacturers, suppliers, whereas we have local people also who are manufacturing. There is always a controversy between the local and the global manufacturers while you are going for a standard. Is that true, that because of that it is being delayed, or are you all for it? What is the situation now?
So at a very non-controversial and very diplomatic answer to your question, yes, there have been delays in a lot of BIS standards for commercial reasons of some companies, without naming them. I would look at the positive, Renu, and in that, and this is a comment that actually we received from BIS, is the number of standards that we've been able to come up with at the BIS level, including getting facades as a part of the National Building Code, has been done in record time. So while there are delays on part of some entities, I would say it's more the exception. The general rule is that we've had a tremendous amount of cooperation from all the stakeholders in the facade industry when it comes to formulating new glass standards. So I believe Jyoti mentioned at the start of this conversation that we do not have tangible standards, Indian standards rather, and we have to bank on or fall back on the American or Australian or European standards. At least I can say very proudly, on the glass front, we had this huge set of new standards that has come into now, where we are able to refer to these at the Indian level, a very topical level, which is relevant to our country, to our climate, to our way of working, and we are able to now get them specified as a part of building projects. So, I mean, I'm looking at this from a very positive side, and yes, there has been tremendous progress over the last, I would say, at least since 2016 on this.
The other day I was talking to Nina, and she was telling that, such kind of topics are not taught in the architectural colleges, and it is kept for the final semester of the 5th year. Am I right? So what kind of exposure do you want to provide for the upcoming architects on selection of materials, considering the safer buildings?
So I was talking to Tariq informally the other day, and telling him that we really need to engage with the industry, and especially because this is like a niche industry. We look at architecture broadly, and we look at buildings broadly, and we're trying to sort of set up some kind of ground rules. But obviously, as soon as our graduates enter the field, then they have to confront these, nuts and bolts issues. And therefore, I think for our final year students, of course, we when they're doing their thesis, we require them to, which is what I was sharing with you, those drawings the other day. We require them to take their thesis out to consultants. If they're doing a tall building, we tell them go and talk to a structures person, find out what's the effect on that. If they are doing in fact, Abhishek had guided a student of ours who was doing this high rise, and he had this kind of a twisting floor plate, and he had this continuous facade around it. And so Abhishek told him, go out and talk to somebody and find out how it is that this thing is actually going to be built. And therefore, towards the final, the higher class, because you see, that's when they actually start generating, the base knowledge that is required to be able to put this whole thing together. In the beginning, I mean, the first, second, and third year is just kind of giving them the basics of, how to put the whole building together. That said, this is something actually that we should engage in our master's level courses. For example, Jamia has this building services course where they do an MArch in building services. There are some other universities which are doing that. And I think that those courses and the industry can actually, tie up. We can collaborate, we can outsource. We should be able to send our modules to you and tell us, that are we doing it the right way? We can actually work in tandem with them and ask them to, what is it that you would like your graduates? I mean, because our graduates go out and work in the field. And we would like to engage with them and ask them that what is it that you should be, our graduates should know. That said, I think what academia offers is a bit of a perspective, because I've been on the other side of the field also. And what I feel is that when you're in practice, because you're doing so much, and there is always the constraint of time, and there's the constraint of money, then thought becomes, relegated to the background. And that's where I really hope that, we can engage with industry and say that, let us do the thinking for you. But the thinking has to be there.
Sorry there. Ayush, when you go down, I mean, you finished your post-graduation from London, and then you started your work. What kind of difficulties did you face that you think that you could have added all these things to the academics rather than going just textbook education?
So so basically handling your own firm and like studying as whatever you study, they're like completely off, because I specialized in building information modeling and everything. So I came back with a mindset that, okay, let's do something new in India, but people are not aware about such things over here, right? So yes, students are aware about. When I talk to students, they are very excited about all these things and all that, but it is not taken seriously. I'm not talking about higher scale projects. Maybe yes, they are taking it very seriously, but on a smaller scale projects, because India, we have in like huge amount of smaller scale projects that's going on. That is my focus is where, because on higher scale projects, you get a lot of consultants involved and you get a lot of people involved on the project, and they can collaborate and they are well educated, well trained, even the contractors. But in a smaller scale projects, it becomes difficult when you try to tell them these things. And these are very important things because it helps you save time, it helps you save cost. And yes, it helps you save environment as well if you take into consideration of everything. And we are in fight with contractors every day to do things differently, but they are just too rigid to do it. And so whatever we have learned, it's very difficult to put it back when we are doing such type of projects because of the people involved in the industry. So that is the most difficult thing that I face. Like people are not ready to change yet.
Yeah. So the next question is for Anuprita, who is a very well experienced architect, and Abhishek. On the fire safety aspects, when you are designing a larger scale building, just about the fire safety. Fire is the most discussed topic. So that's why people keep writing to us about the fire safety aspects. So what are the key factors to consider when you are going for the building facades, considering the fire safety?
Yeah, I feel besides, of course, all these measures that you're taking to curb the spread of fire, fire or smoke through floors, even in the selection of the material, you have to be very particular about when you're selecting the material to see that its combustibility, or its what is its retardant power,
Classification.
how long will it last without failing. So all those things also add up a lot, because that is your main thing in the beginning that you need to see. Once you select the correct material, then you can go ahead and design for the correct system to put up your cladding. So I think that basic thing of being able to select the correct material is very important. You need to give that a thought first to begin with.
So you are happy with the standard of material what is being used in India? There are so many standards. European is there, US, American standards are there. Which one to go for? And do you get confused on referring products?
Oh yes, there is a lot of confusion, but yes, you have to use your own. You need to do a lot of research yourself and spend time understanding all these standards and making the correct decisions. There is a lot of effort that you need to put in yourself also, because of all this, the dearth of information that is there out there.
So Abhishek, have you found some difficulty in the selection, or do you convincing your client on selection of products?
Material selection is very easy. There's never time and there's never money. So you pick up the cheapest and the quickest material that you can lay your hands on. So it's not a problem. But yes, the repository, like I had mentioned earlier, the repository of material that is available is immense. And I would just like to backtrack a little and just pick up from something what Ayush said. So the struggle is definitely on smaller projects, and the struggle is usually to choose the right material for the vision that you have. And there are two instances that I said I'll save for later. I probably bring it up when the images were going on. The world facade, the perforated facade building that you probably showed, is actually just an MS Jali. When we proposed this, and I was just fresh out of post-grad school, and you have the hangover of Zaha and Foster and so on and so forth because it's taught you. So you come down and do this as your first and second building. Now your intention is to water jet SS, because you can do it. You can do it, and there are industry available. But of course, there's no budget. So what do? We contact our little fabricator. And I love his name is Babu Bhaiya. And Babu Bhaiya says ki, what you're asking me is essentially 2 molds. That's it. You're not, why do I need a 1:1 print of every goddamn panel? Just tell me how many circles there are in each panel. Give me the 2 mold sizes. I'll build a tool for you and install it. And that's it. That was so simple. And you're complicating, we were complicated things. And similarly on the other facade, the molded dimensions that me and Sushant worked on together, Sushant and me were giving him crazy azimuth angles and joinery details, and he just came back to us as ki aap ye point de denge, aap ye point de denge, aap ye point de denge. I was like, haan de denge. So he's like, bas de do na, what is this complication? So all he was asking was XYZs. And that's it. So something that really excites us at the office is to work and change your construction methodology to suit what the site requires. Mm-hmm. And the conversation completely changes. So yes, you can write the best of tools and codes and so on and so forth, but write it according to the information that is required at site. And this facade, it's won several awards. It's beautiful. We didn't have the money for IPA or any other thermopine or something. It's just a fiber concrete panel, which is like $80 or something like that. So we wanted to do that facade. The client does not have a budget. You suggest a material. You don't have the applicators that you would like, an organized sector. Talk to them. They'll tell you what they need. And if you have the capacity as an architect to detail it out, bang on, you got the recipe. Do it.
Great. Good. Such incidences with you, Tariq? I'm sure you have done the Hyatt. You might have faced so many. That's a wonderful facade, which right. I have seen.
Well, what Abhishek just said in terms of, there's this big, at the risk of sounding cliched, what do you call it? Think global and act local. yes, we had. So you mentioned a right project actually, Renu, because the facade was designed in an office in Atlanta, and the site was in Hyderabad. And the challenge was, how do you work with all the materials that have been specified in a different part of the world, and get them implemented in our country? And mind you, I'm talking almost a decade back. So now that the supply chain has become more robust, there are far more options available at hand. At that time, although not too far off, there was certain more challenges than what we have today. In this case, the client had the budget, and more importantly than the budget, I always say, is the intent. So they had this intent of making sure that whatever has been put on paper is actually the one which is on show as the final product. And that's the reason why we found it convenient to get the kind of glasses and products specified the way they were. There were obviously, this facade would be, I would say, 3x or 4x at that time of a typical conventional facade, but they went ahead with this. One of the big challenges also I want to highlight here is, and what happens also with a lot of other facades, is facades generally come at the fag end of the project. So once you have an X budget specified at the time of building construction, you realize that by the time you reach the facade and by the time you purchase the facade, there have been a lot of overruns in the budget with other elements. And then you tend to sort of value engineer more on the facade side, because your building only has a fixed upper limit as far as the budget goes. And since you've exhausted a lot on other materials, you tend to cut down when it comes to these final products. That did not happen again with this building. So, the intent was there, it got materialized, and everything fell in place.
Yeah, I think that
I really like what Abhishek said. And I think if I have to take one takeaway, a lot of times we tend to overcomplicate things with our design, and then we realize, there's such a simple way of looking at it, which doesn't strike us. It strikes the people who are hands, at the grassroots level. They know the business better than what we do sitting here in our posh offices. So sometimes it's just best to leave it to them to come up with their mindset and implement. आप अपने हिसाब से implement कर दो and make sure that the building is the way we want it to be.
Yeah. So I think in the colleges now, that every student wants to become a Calatrava or a Zaha Hadid, which may not be possible with all these constraints which I am.
You can. I mean, what Abhishek was saying was exactly, the whole point. I mean, you can dream up amazing things, but then engage locally. I mean, what Tariq was saying about think global, act global, yes, it's cliche, but it's so relevant. I mean, I know some architects, without being named, who sort of, who built award-winning buildings by engaging with the local potter to give them pots for insulation, who engaged with the local stonemasons to give a very exciting facade, which provided actually employment to the local people for almost 2 years, because that's what the project lives are. So you can, you can't stop the architect from dreaming up amazing stuff. Yes, of course they should. But then what sometimes happens is that when we are, going and doing it, I mean, he's talking about, this whole thinking in algorithms and using the computers. Yes, we can do that, but we do not at this point of time have the support facilities to sort of augment that. So for now, we will have to do what Abhishek is doing, which means you dream up this amazing thing, and then you go to the mason or whoever the person on site is, and engage with him and say, okay, how are you going to do it? And that becomes contextual. Sometimes it might even change what you had thought of, but that's for the for the better. You're actually adapting to context. And if the guy says, you know what, it's not going to work like this, let's look at it in a different way, and you go back to the drawing board and you sort of do it again, why not? I mean, how is that? So if you're, again, some of us also have this, like, we are star architects, and I have this amazing idea which is not going to change at all. Why? I mean, you can engage and you can see whether that particular idea can get morphed, and which is what we tell our students, that you can have amazing ideas, but try and keep them rooted. Try and keep trying to figure out isko banayenge kaise.
Correct.
I think it's almost 1.5 hours since we have started the discussion. There is one question to everyone which has come from one Bill Marshall. How much you weigh when while you're considering the aesthetic issues of the facade and the interior and exterior views? whether it is 50-50% or whether it is how much do you weigh while you are considering the external aesthetics and the interior comfort? That's
depends on who's it for. And something that Tariq mentioned, if it's something for lease, you woo the buyer, and if it's for yourself, you look at every aspect. You look at user comfort, you look at interior experiences, and so on and so forth. In an ideal answer is everything, 100% for both, but that's untrue.
So now another one is that the glare and the people be working from work from home now. What is the impact of facade and facade on the working environment and wellness, and how the glass can be used in an effective way to prevent glare and the wellness of people?
So, I mean, if I can take that one, in a country like India, where we don't have a paucity of sunlight, glare is undesirable. Unlike in the West, where they want more sunlight to come in because they have fewer daylight hours than what we have here. So, I mean, what we suggest as an ideal recommendation is for glasses to have somewhere between a 40 to 50% light transmission. And again, we saw this with Anuprita's presentation on how you can have different facade types for different facade orientations. So when something is having more incident sunlight, you tend to block it with either a second skin or with a darker glass. Something which is, say, on the east side, you could have probably more light coming in because that light is not very intense. But yeah, the issue of glare always exists. The best way of doing it is what I have in my background is to use blinds as a second skin under my control. When I want it, it's up. When I want it, it's down. But I'm sure the future doesn't want it to be this way, and we want to automate it more and more. Some of the dynamic glass technologies that we spoke of, but those are some years rather in the making, not something that you would see immediately. The concept of working from home, I don't know how anything would change because you're just transferring your office from a literal office building to your home office, which generally has a lower window to wall ratio. In office spaces, you have higher window to wall ratio, so you have more light coming in the residences. Typically, again, I'm not generalizing, but typically the window size is relatively smaller, so you have less light streaming in. Of course, new constructions in residences also have very, very large openings. But I would suggest have between a 40 to 50% light transmission for you to have a very comfortable interior. Irrespective whether you're working from home or working from an actual office, I think the ground rules remain all the same.
Anuprita, anything to add to that?
No, I just thought about a project of mine where we were trying to have these movable screens in a residential project, that you can move them whenever. So it's up to you. Every individual apartment can move their own screens as per their requirement during the day. At various times of the day, they just move the screens around. You can install them.
That becomes an active facade, in all of this that we are looking at mechanization. But if you just look at movable screens so that becomes a vernacular take on an active facade.
It will be a very interesting because everybody is doing it at their own, the way they want to do it. And so the elevation is always changing.
Exactly. And the elevation, it can become quite interesting. There are so many, images of self-help communities generating these facades, which are constantly evolving and they are changing. And if you can program that change by instituting some codes, then you can actually just, have a very, very organic system working for itself.
Yeah.
Tariq, there is another question from an audience. Somebody is asking that you are talking about switchable glasses. How does it work? And are you dealing with switchable glasses?
Yes, we do. The way it works is, there are two technologies to do this. In both cases, the glass is laminated either with a film or now we have liquid crystal display technologies also. And basically, it works on a concept of molecular alignment within that film. When the molecules are completely aligned, it's in the when you switch it on, the glass becomes clear, and when it's in the off state, they disperse and it becomes off. So you have a transition between a translucent and a relatively clear facade on demand. That's the concept of switchable glass. It's predominantly an interior product. The technology is not very well suited for use in external facades because of its because it's not very resistant to UV, at least the facades, the technology that is available at hand. So most of this you would find either as conference room partitions or cabin partitions or something like this.
Okay. So I think there are many questions which I will be forwarding it to you, which will come to us later too when we are putting it on the social media and on our platform. So thank you so much being part of it. Something which we have to, yes.
No, I just wanted, I forgot
Yeah.
one point which I thought I will mention it.
Yes.
Is that there have been some developments now in the last few months where in terms of safety, again, for glass, where the government of India has issued a notification for all kinds of glasses, that is annealed glass, Tasman glass, IGUs, and all kinds of processed glass. They need to be tested at a independent testing lab and get the ISI mark. That's a BIS mark. So every panel of glass which is to be used in buildings coming, in the future needs to have that stamp of ISI. That means it has to have gone through a process of testing, and that product has to have, been approved, and it has to perform to a certain standard. So you can't use the wrong glass for the wrong application. For example, typically we have these frameless handrails which are very popular now, where you have the aluminum channel in the bottom which is anchored to the slab, and you have the glass panel which is up to maybe 1.2 meter, 1.1 meter, depending on the height of the building. The recommended glass which is to be used is laminated glass, and we still have so many clients who come in and ask us to test for using heat strengthened glass or toughened glass, where that particular panel, where the particular panel which I test may pass, but I can say with 99.9% guarantee that every panel is not going to perform to this panel. So the risk of using a safety, just a toughened glass for a handrail is going to be tremendous, because any of those glasses can have these structural problems because of this nickel, which probably Tariq is the master on that. And this stress in the glass can pop up at any of those anchoring points. And that particular point, if cracks, the whole glass is going to fall. If it's a 10-storied building or a 50-storied building, can you imagine the impact of a 1 square inch glass coming down, accelerating down and hitting somebody on their head? It will simply be like a bullet.
Catastrophic, yes.
So we have, yet to understand the implications of using the wrong product and the wrong application and the consequences of that. So government is also trying to make things more clear, puts more safety standards into the picture. I'm sure the industry will take the cue from there, and architects also will, ensure that the client uses the right product, because end of the day, somebody has to take ownership for it.
So the clarity of ideas, clarity of materials, and the coordination between the architect, consultant, builders, and the efficiency of materials, safety of materials, maintaining standards and specifications, norms. These all there is a checkbox which we need to, a checklist which we have to make and to be followed, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So you can all give your conclusion statement on the platform to conclude with your observation in one line. I will start from Anuprita on the use of material for safety and security. Just a line to conclude.
I think it needs to be given its due importance when we start off with designing a building. If we are from the start itself able to look at all aspects and amalgamate them right from the beginning, then I think the end product will be. I mean, the intention is always there, but there's some or the other, some aspects that come in the way, and sometimes some things get overlooked. So if from the beginning itself, if we are able to amalgamate all aspects, then I think at the end there will be no regrets and everything will,
Thank you.
come together.
What's your one-line solution for safer facades? Yeah, Abhishek.
Oh, that's on me. Okay. So I think bang on what Anuprita said. And the other, I think the solution is that we just palm it off to the next person who's going to look after safety. I think if everyone just takes it upon themselves, I am the stakeholder for this amount, but I'm going to give a due decision based on my limited understanding on safety, and pass on the baton, and everybody just looks at their little bit instead of just worrying that the next person is going after. I think that's going to really help.
Yeah, Ayush.
Yeah, so I believe from the starting of the project, we should have a proper team. Like as you say, like the architect comes first, then the facade consultant may come at at some point of a project. But they should come together in the beginning only and solve all these issues together, because everyone is capable in their own field and they are expertise. And so I don't think that there is nothing that we cannot solve. But we need a good team from the beginning of the project only.
Okay. So now let's hear it from Jyoti.
Yeah, I think
every day you must be dealing with some problem or other.
no, I actually am not. The thing is that between the dream of the architect and the reality, there is always a bridge, and it's possible to even build it within a budget. It's that this giving enough importance to every expert in the process. There are specialists. If you are able to take the right inputs from the right specialists, sometimes even the most challenging, complicated problems have very simple. For example, like Abhishek was mentioning, the guy who was actually the shop or the machine shop guy or the sheet metal worker, he's the guy we have to give each of the specialists their importance. And there will be solutions where it comes from the right place and it doesn't cost too much. But bottom line, what I would have is that there is no compromise on safety, because human life doesn't come cheap.
Yeah. Tariq, from you.
So 2 points. First, if I have to conclude on the topic of this discussion, it's very pure form and it says safe building materials and safe cladding materials. I would just say aesthetics and budget can be compromised, safety cannot. So, I mean, this applies, as Abhishek said, every level of the supply chain with every stakeholder. This should be the fundamental premise on which you build upon everything else. And that safety is a non-compromisable aspect of any construction. Yes, human life doesn't come cheap. It should not be cheap. So 2 ways of looking at it: either it's driven down through intent, or then it's driven through regulations. I would say on the positive side, with new codes and new regulations coming in, it's also, the onus is also on the respective municipal authorities and the respective government authorities to enforce this in buildings. And to everybody who's there as a part of this discussion, the onus also falls on us as responsible stakeholders to ensure that we give the right recommendations if it's already not in place. Yeah. So I think that's one of the important takeaways from discussions like this. And Renu, we need more and more of such engagements. Yes. Very, very important. I would also like to, I mean, I'm taking more time, but I would also like to commend Nina and her excellent work. We had this informal chat yesterday on why facade should be a more important topic in academia, which currently does not exist. But yes, we are seeing a lot of efforts there, and that trend also needs to be sustained. And just one last point: next time you want a debate, get a developer on board. I think we are all on one side. We need people who actually on the other side to have a very, very.
Definitely, we will definitely look at it, and right. Yes, we are going to have another one soon with developers, not one. We will have 2-3 more. Okay, and Nina carrying this big responsibility of educating the future generation. What is your conclusion on this aspect of safety and security of facade buildings? And
So I'll again take the broader kind of field. So my first takeaway is, we need, whenever we adopt technology, whichever technology, we need to do it very responsibly. We need to be aware of what we are doing, why are we doing it, and honestly, we need to slow down. I understand developers, they are going to constantly push you. Clients are going to constantly say, do this yesterday. But you know what? A lot of us are very fond of blaming clients and blaming developers for a lot of things that eventually fall apart. But it's our responsibility, right? You slow down. You say, I'm going to take time. When I used to practice, I used to do interiors. So my clients used to say yesterday, and I used to work with this partner friend of mine, and she used to say, Nina, you take so much time. And I was like, you know what? I just don't know. I just want to do it slowly and carefully. And then I realized it doesn't work. You can't do it slowly and carefully. That was one of the impetuses of actually, just leaving it all and sort of shifting to academics, where I said, okay, now I can at least think slowly and work things through. And which is what we try and tell our students, what's just slow down and let things mature, let them take their time. And in this initiative of yours is so relevant because this is cutting edge. This is something that we need to address like yesterday. And on a larger scheme of things, I think we need to engage with industry. I think there is a thing about practice which kind of looks at academia and says, you know what, you guys, haven't got your hands dirty, you don't know how it is out there, you've got to come here and do it, and then you understand. And then we sit and say, you know what, you're just getting your hands dirty, and look at the mess that's happening out there. 90% of our buildings are not worth looking at, and is that what we want to do? Is that where we want to go? So I think a consistent engagement, and I think WFM has provided a fantastic platform for that because it's so kind of topical. Let's just continue to have the dialogue, and let's see, that all of us are able to fulfill our obligations in the process.
Thank you so much. We hope that we will reach that expectations maybe over a period of time. It's not that easy to connect the whole community together, and it's not easy to come together to one platform and discuss the same thing together. So this is just an effort. So we will be conducting these kind of webinars, one-on-one interactions. We will help our architect, our consultant, and our builder platform together to come to one stage and discuss many aspects of construction and the hurdles they face and the good things and the bad things happening in the industry. So I hope and I wish the very best to everyone, and look forward to more and more questions where we can connect people who can answer your questions, the experts, and from different fields. So thank you so much for everyone to be there in the platform. On the platform, we will be sending more questions to you as and when we get it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, panelists.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have been here.
Nice to meet everyone. Thanks.